What is up, DS3 TV? We are back for another video. This one is the Ottoman Empire, part 11. Kind of, got the years, I guess. I didn't go in order, but somebody did want me to do that video first, so I don't know why, but yeah, that kind of got us all out of order. But hey, we are here now, watching, the Ottoman Empire part 11. And this is Ottoman-Mamluk War, 1516 to 1517. And yeah, so let's get into it. Also, subscribe to the channel. I want to get 1,000 subscribers by Valentine's Day. Also, thank you guys again for getting me up to 4,000 watch hours. That is really crazy. It's honestly insane. But yeah, so let's get into the video. And yeah, also subscribe to the channel. Want to get 1,000 subscribers by Valentine's Day. Gonna say that again before we get into the video because I had to start up the recording. But yeah, let's get into it and play.
In our previous episode on Ottoman history, we covered their first war against the Safavids and the Battle of Chaldiran. Although the Ottomans were mainly concerned with European expansion in the first 2 centuries of their history, Chaldiran opened a new avenue for their conquests. The Ottomans were now on a collision course with the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt, and the war between the two would change the situation in the Middle East for the next few centuries. But before we continue, allow us to thank our sponsor, Wix. Wix is everything you need to create a beautiful personalized site with solutions for every need, be it business. Sultan Selim I won against the Safavid Shah Ismail I at the Battle of Chaldiran in 1514, and even occupied the capital of the Safavids, Tabriz. But soon he was forced to leave the city due to the food situation and to avoid mutiny among his soldiers. Still, the Ottomans were able to annex most of eastern Anatolia and parts of northern Iran and the Caucasus due to this war. The eastern borders of the Ottoman Empire were relatively secure for decades, but new challenges in the region forced Selim to strengthen the frontier. The Ramazanids and Dulkadir were 2 Turkic beyliks which were left somewhat independent as a buffer between the Ottomans and the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt. In the summer of 1515, Selim ended this independence, thus completing the conquest of Anatolia. War with the Mamluks was now inevitable. But who were the Mamluks? In the 9th century, the Abbasid Caliphate started the practice of enslaving young boys, mostly from the Turkic tribes, but also from among the Circassians and the Orthodox Christians. These slaves received military training, but also learned tactics, religion, languages and sciences. They were then freed and served as the guards for Muslim sultans. The Mamluk...
Yeah, because I was going to say they actually... A lot of, slavery was definitely not like how the new modernization of slavery is that we know of today. You're a slave for your whole entire life. That's cattle. I believe that's called chattel slavery or cattle slavery, where you're a slave for your whole entire life. You can never get your way out of freedom. But yeah, so it was definitely very different. And I understand the slavery that they're talking about. And this is honestly a different kind. I don't want to say a good kind of slavery because you still had them as slaves as children, but you did at least teach them things and then they were able to get out of slavery. But still, it was still bad. I'm definitely not saying that this was good at all. So, but I do understand that, when you're in wartime and you capture other people's land, you have to take prisoners of war, and more than likely they do become slaves to you. So I do understand how war works. Somebody has to be a loser, somebody has to be a winner, and if you're on the losing side, it's a good possibility back, and especially back then, that you were going to be taken as a slave, like how in when Hitler was around, that it was a good possibility you might be put in a concentration camp if you were captured. So yeah.
Mamluks often gained influence and came to power, founding ruling dynasties in Central Asia, Mesopotamia and India. By 1260, the Turkic Mamluks of the Egyptian Ayyubid Sultanate managed to wrestle power away from them and established their Bahri dynasty. Between 1260 and 1323, the Mamluks stopped attacks from the European Crusaders and Mongol Ilkhanate, most famously during the Battle of Ain Jalut, and consolidated their rule over Egypt and Syria. Even though Armenian Cilicia fell to them by 1375, the Turkic sultans were losing their influence over their Mamluk brethren, and in 1382 they were toppled by the Circassian Burji dynasty. Over the following decades, this new dynasty strengthened its positions in Anatolia by bringing the Ramazanids and Dulkadir into their sphere of influence. Despite rivalry over the spice trade and religious problems stemming from the fact that the Mamluks kept the Abbasid caliphs as hostages, the Ottomans and the Mamluks were neutral through the 14th and 15th centuries, only fighting in a border conflict between 1485 and 1491. This short war ended in a stalemate and the sides signed a peace treaty. However, this peace didn't last long, as the rise of the Safavids and Shi'ism would change the balance of power in the region. The Mamluks hoped that the Safavids and Ottomans would weaken each other, so when the Shah Ismail I sent envoys to the European states to ask for an anti-Ottoman alliance in the early 1500s.
If you guys have any videos any video you can recommend me on what's the difference with Shia and Sunni Muslim, because I really actually want to I kind of want to see what's the difference, because I don't I know that there's a difference, but I don't know what's the actual difference in it. So maybe there's a video out there that you want me to watch about that, and yeah, you can put that in the comment section too. If you have a video that you want me to watch about both of those faiths in the Muslim religion.
In hundreds, the Mamluks allowed them to pass. The Ottomans knew about it and pressured the Mamluks not to allow the envoys to return to Ismail. As the Safavids had decisively lost the Battle of Chaldiran in 1514, and the Ramazanids and Dulkadir were occupied, it was becoming clear to the Mamluk Sultan, Algari, that his realm would be attacked by the Ottomans next, so he accepted an offer of alliance from Ismail I in 1516. Algari marched to Syria, leaving his vizier Tumen Bey in Cairo. The Ottoman-Mamluk War had started. Unfortunately for the Mamluk Sultan, the Ottomans were at peace with all their European neighbours, and Ismail didn't have enough of a force to threaten them, so Selim was able to assemble all of his troops against them. In April, the Ottoman leader sent his vizier Sinan Pasha with the vanguard to capture the crucial passes through the Taurus Mountains, but the cavalry-heavy army of Algari was faster and took control of the passages. Sinan Pasha was forced to wait for Selim, who arrived in Konya in July. The Ottoman Sultan wasn't eager to fight in a narrow passage. At this point, the Ottoman sources diverge from the Arab and Persian sources, as they claim that Ismail managed to send an army to help the Mamluks, but this army was defeated by the Ottomans somewhere in eastern Anatolia. In any case, Selim I decided to bypass the Taurus Mountains and moved to Malatya. At the same time, Algari, understanding that he might be outflanked, retreated from his position to Aleppo. Selim was now marching to the south, and although the Mamluks attempted to make peace, the Ottomans ignored it and even killed the Mamluk envoys, as reported by the Arab sources. The sources are also conflicted about the number of troops. The Mamluks had anywhere from 20 to 50,000 soldiers, while Selim had between 30 and 60,000. The Mamluks had a limited amount of gunpowder weapons and no artillery, but their heavy horsemen were of the highest quality and were undefeated in the field. The sides met at a place called Marj Dabiq on the 24th of August. There are multiple descriptions of the battle, but we will present just one of them. The Mamluk Sultan placed his cavalry in a reversed crescent with infantry in the second line. He was in the center, with the governor of Damascus to his right and the governor of Aleppo to his left. Meanwhile, the Ottomans placed their cavalry on the flanks, with the light cannons on the right side of the second line, the Sultan and his guard in the center, and the Janissaries armed with gunpowder weapons on the left. Their cannons were placed on wagons in the rear. Al-Ghari's army was in a more mobile formation, and they used that early in the battle, starting their attack in a crescent and shifting their left flank forward. This worked, as the Ottoman cavalry on the right side was forced to flee after the charge of the heavy Mamluk cavalry, while the left slowly retreated under the combined pressure of the Mamluk right and center. The Mamluk left continued its assault, but was greeted by a volley from the light Ottoman cannons on the right and moved back. The Mamluks shifted their line again and pushed the Ottoman center. The details are unclear, but it seems that Selim took direct command and achieved an orderly retreat behind the wagons. The Ottoman heavy cannons opened fire upon the enemy, and the Mamluk center was shocked and had to retreat. While this was happening, the Mamluk right finally forced the Ottoman cavalry back, but was met by the Janissary guns. Al-Ghari then ordered his left to swing back and charge the Ottomans from the right and rear, but this order was ignored. The sources are inconsistent, but it seems that the governor of Aleppo either betrayed his sultan or was sure that the battle was lost. He left the battlefield, taking the infantry with him. The Ottoman cavalry used the disarray of the Mamluk army. Most of it was surrounded and killed, along with Al-Ghari. The number of losses is unclear, but the Ottoman casualties were at least 10,000, while the Mamluk heavy cavalry elite was gone. Selim's conquest of Syria was easy, as the majority of the Mamluk garrisons were defeated at Marj Dabiq. Still, he needed time to secure his position, procure supplies, and allow his navy to join the army in Syria. So he sent his vizier Sinan Pasha in command of the vanguard to occupy the crucial coastal castles. Meanwhile in Cairo, Tumen Bey became the Sultan and started recruiting a new army. He rejected the offer to become an Ottoman vassal, and the envoys were killed. Tumen Bey knew that the fortresses were of utmost importance if he wanted to keep the Ottomans at bay, so he sent his vanguard to the region. Once again the numbers are debated, but the two vanguards encountered each other at a place called Khan Yunis in late October. The battle started with volleys from the Ottoman artillery. Mamluk General al-Ghazali knew that his cavalry would not be able to withstand the Ottoman gunpowder weapons for long, so he ordered a charge. However, this was just a feint, and after the initial clash, the Mamluks started retreating towards the valley to the south. The Ottoman horsemen followed them, and the two cavalry units fought each other in the valley for some time, as the elite Mamluk knights died in Marj Dabiq, and the new recruits were still inexperienced. The battle was in balance when the Ottoman gunpowder units finally arrived. They shot at the flanks of the Mamluk army, and the fight was soon over. The Mamluks lost up to 5,000, while the Ottoman casualties were light. After this defeat, the remaining Mamluk forces were concentrated near Cairo. At the same time, the Ottoman navy finally arrived, and Selim started his march towards Egypt. The journey through the Sinai Desert was difficult, but the navy supplied the Ottoman army, and in January of 1517 it entered Egypt. On the 22nd of January, Tumen Bey clashed with Selim at a place called Radanieh, on the outskirts of Cairo. The Mamluks recently bought 300 cannons from the Venetians, and they were placed in the moats. Meanwhile, the Ottomans had placed their artillery on the hills behind their positions. The artillery duel was short and ended with an Ottoman victory, as the Mamluks didn't have enough experience to operate their new weapons. The Ottomans then sent volleys against the Mamluk cavalry, which charged to take the hill and the artillery. However, this charge was stopped by volleys from the Janissaries. At this point, Selim implemented a flanking maneuver, which surprised the Mamluks. Their army was dispersed and left the field. The Ottoman vanguard took Cairo without any resistance, but it was a trap, and on the 26th, Tumen Bey's forces entered the city and destroyed the vanguard in a quick battle. The Ottoman Sultan learned about this on the 27th and sent his Janissaries to retake the city. The local population joined Tumen Bey. The fighting in the city continued until the 3rd of February, when the Ottomans finally regained control. It is said that tens of thousands of Cairo's citizens were killed, among them most of the Mamluk nobility. Tumen Bey continued his resistance for a few more months, but was captured and executed in March. The conquest of Syria and Egypt was finalized. In the span of 3 years, Selim I doubled the territory of the Ottoman Empire. The East was pacified, and the Ottomans were looking towards Europe once again. Thank you for watching another episode in our series on the Ottoman Wars. New videos in this series are on the way, so make sure.
That was a good video. And yeah, talk to you guys in the next video, and peace.